Hello again, everybody, with John Dodds. I'm Tom Pippins. Welcome to another edition of the Marquette Hoops Basketball Show. And of course, we're talking tournament. That's as exciting as it gets. And it's brought to you by Moonlight Graham, proud sponsor of MarquetteHoops.com and the Marquette Basketball Show. Modern dental benefits. Moonlight Graham. We're so grateful. They're a key player. They are the aircraft carriers, the late great Al McGuire would say. Back in the tournament, Shaka Smart and company, the first season. Unbelievable, John.
That's a monumental achievement, especially when you think January 1st, they lost that double overtime game to Creighton, 4-game losing streak. They couldn't hit shots. They lost to UCLA and Wisconsin, and we were flatlining, I thought. And then, unbelievable, winning 8 out of 9, beating Villanova twice. Highlight of the year is probably the Villanova win at the Forum. The quality of play for 40 minutes, they really brought it. Then kind of a slump toward the end of the year, maybe losing 6 out of the last 10 in the regular season and going into the tournament at NYC. There's no secrets in the Big East. People, coaches scout, see weaknesses, and it's copycat. So all of a sudden, I know that DePaul, their coach, said that they decided to key on Tyler Kolek and really made his life more difficult. So in a young team, they tend to wear down at the end of the year. But the achievement of getting to the NCAA tournament is just amazing. It's part of a big process. I watched it in 1993. Marquette had the 12th and last bid and played Oklahoma State in Big Country down in Indianapolis. That experience was a trampoline for the next year, getting to the Sweet 16 and beating Kentucky. Then in Dwayne Wade's first year, they lost to Tulsa, but just getting there was the springboard to the 2003 Final Four run. So just getting there is huge. The young players will get experience. There's nothing more tense than the tension you feel at an NCAA tournament. So just getting through that, never would have believed it January 1st that they would have been here. At best, maybe a play-in at Dayton, but playing North Carolina as a 9 seed, unbelievable season.
And of course, opening on Thursday as they did against the Tar Heels, we hearken back to 1977, Marquette's first and only national championship, and we bring in Joe Moran, of course, who is a Marquette grad, as you are, JD, and he authored the great book, You Can Call Me Al, another book when Dwayne Wade led the team to the Final Four. So we'll get right into Joe Moran. He is a treasure. The Marquette Hoops Basketball Show and Joe Moran brought to you by Moonlight Graham, Modern Dental Benefits. Moonlight Graham, a proud sponsor of Marquette Hoops and the Basketball Show. Joe Moran, I loved what you said earlier. You walked in here and said, you know what? It's the best time of the year.
Yeah, the NCAA tournament brings everyone together, where you're the classic $2 bettor or a person who's in an office pool who just wants to pick a team based on mascots and the team colors. Yeah. And everybody gets a chance to try their hand at picking out the perfect bracket. And of course, I think the odds against picking that are 1 in quintillion or something like that. So it's very, very difficult, but you know what? It's fun and everybody enjoys it. And I think that's the one sporting event every year that brings everybody together.
Absolutely. Of course, Shaka Smart getting Marquette back to the big dance. And John Dodds, we have to talk. They tipped off initially, of course, against North Carolina. We go back 45 years, the national championship, Al McGuire and company, Marquette beating the Tar Heels of Dean Smith at that time.
That season really started the summer before in the Montreal Olympics in 1976 when there wasn't a lot of coverage of basketball at the time and there was no internet. And I remember sitting on in front of my TV set, and all of a sudden they said, we have a crazy thing going on in the basketball arena. And they went over, and it was the USA team that was supposed to win the gold medal, coached by Dean Smith, Phil Ford, Scott May, I think Kent Benson. There's just a lot of great players on it. And they were having trouble with this Puerto Rican team. And it was getting down to the end of the line. And they said there, and then Kurt Gowdy came on and said, there's this guy, his name is Butch Lee. He plays for Marquette. He's got 35 points. And I'm looking, I'm like, what? And I'm looking, there's no internet, there's no news, there's no ESPN at the time in 1976. And I said, well, he's that really good guard that we recruited from New York, and he was our two guard, and he was kind of a quiet two guard. Butch Lee became a household name in the United States. And when the AP and other reporters got together, Marquette was preseason #1 in a lot of polls because of, hey, they got this guy Butch Lee. And not only that, they have Bo Ellis, they have these other really good players. Wow, this is one heck of a team. So that, and then Al McGuire went up to Bo Ellis, and Al McGuire had this senior objective where he would do whatever it could to publicize the seniors. And it was the year before, it was Lloyd Walton and Earl Tatum's time as seniors, and the other players, including Butch Lee, would just kind of sit back and wait their turn and patiently. But he went to Bo Ellis and he said, Bo, we have this guy, Butch Lee. He could take us to a new level. Would you mind if we used him? And Bo just said, I want to win. Mm-hmm. And Bo sacrificed, typical Bo Ellis. So he sacrificed that. And then, so they came into the season, preseason #1, and in the middle of December, Al announced his retirement, effective at the end of the year. And that took the wind out of the sails. I know that same day they lost to Louisville in overtime at the Mecca, where Butch Lee missed 2 free throws with no time left that would have won the game. Wow. And it went into overtime, they lost. So you knew that they were in a mental state that was just a little bit off because Al was leaving.
And of course, you're a graduate, 82 of Marquette. Joe Moran, our special guest, 1980. And Joe, everybody remembers where they were. Even I had no connection with Milwaukee at that time. I was working at a Syracuse, New York television station, and I went out, there was a break, and so I've got my feet up on a desk, and I'm watching these guys with these long uniforms, and I'm saying, wow, who are these? So I remember that great run. I think that was the UNC Charlotte game that I saw initially, and the tip-in and all that, or the long pass. Your recollections of where you were at that time when Marquette played and beat North Carolina to win the national crown.
I was a freshman in college at a junior college I was attending at the time, Oakton Community College in suburban Chicago. And I watched that afternoon game against UNC Charlotte. And of course, when Jay Whitehead put that ball in, Al always liked to kid that was the most replayed 3 seconds in the history of college basketball, because everybody was wondering whether the ball had left his hands before time had expired. And also, John makes a good point of Jay's hands were still in the cylinder as the ball is bouncing around, and he and Al were worried that there was going to be a possibility of offensive goaltending and that the basket wouldn't count. Where I was at home just watching it, and that night when they were winning the national championship, I was watching in the front room of my parents' home in Deerfield, Illinois, watching the team play, and when the team went ahead by 12 points toward the end of the first half, I sang, this looks pretty good. But Al knew himself that, and he told this to the guys at halftime, Carolina's going to come back. You got to be ready. They are going to come back. So don't let your sweat dry. And Carolina did come back, and when it came time for Dean Smith to put in his 4 corners, Hank always felt that Carolina went to the 4 corners too soon. But in the day before the tournament, Al and Hank had worked the players through their own delay game so that they would be prepared for the 4 corners. And after they went through the practice, Hank said, bring it on. And they beat the 4 corners. Al coached it beautifully, and Dean Smith couldn't do anything about it because the one-man zone of Jay Whitehead under the basket kept denying anything for Carolina in terms of any kind of shot out of that 4 corners.
Is that Joe Moran, or is that legendary Al McGuire? Of course, we've got legendary Joe Moran. Don't let your sweat dry. I'm taking notes. That's beautiful.
Yeah, in fact, that's why he felt that Carolina had gone to the 4 corners too soon, because their sweat dried, their momentum was lost by that point of the game. and that allowed Marquette to be able to stay and continue to win the game.
Your first reaction, JD? They
Well,
win it all.
Yeah, they won it all. I was 17 years old at the time when I was at my family home, and I couldn't move out of my chair because it would have been bad luck. So I sat right there knowing this is the only time we'll ever have a chance. Now, we were in the final game 3 years before with Maurice Lucas, but we caught fire, and I remember that championship game in '77 when interesting thing, Al McGuire would coach with a gut feel, and they had a man-to-man defense set up to guard Phil Ford and Walter Davis. And there was a play underneath the bucket where the ball went out of bounds early in the game, so North Carolina inbounded the ball. And when you inbound the ball underneath the opponent basket, teams usually zone. So Al went 2-3 zone, and they threw it out to Ford, and he set it up, and they were having trouble with it. And Al sensed that, so he threw out the playbook and went 2-3 matchup zone the entire rest of the game, based only on that, which it's just shows you what a great game coach.
Yeah, I was going to say, he's a brilliant tactician, wasn't he, fellas?
He really was. In fact, I think he always thought that Hank Raymond's didn't get enough props for what Hank did. And Hank was unbelievable intellectually, and he was the basketball mind. But Al had a pretty good basketball mind too, but he, out of respect for Hank, he would sit back, and after a while he would rely on Hank and Rick Majerus, where he would take his motorcycle and knew that they were good stewards of the program. But Al did know X's and O's, former NBA player, but I think as a legend grew, he would do things to promote that legend.
We've talked quite often off the air in the past about the fact that the team almost didn't make the tournament, Joe, right? I mean, you wrote about it, of course, and you can call me out.
When the team had gone the last 3 home games lost, I believe, John, 3 out of the 5 last games that they played that they lost. And when Al was asked after the last home game, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it was the Wichita State game was the last home game that they lost.
On senior day.
On senior day. Wow. And the toilet paper is coming from the crowds in the Mecca, onto the floor. And Al was asked after the game, do you think you'll be in the dance? Because that was the 7th loss or the 6th loss of the season at that point. And he said, if you can't win at home, how are you going to win on the road in the NCAA tournament? He said, I just don't think we're going to get the bid. What he told the players was, we have 5 more games on the road. And Al always made sure that the team had scheduled a few games on the road at the end of the year to make them tournament tough before the NCAA tournament began. And so they had 5 straight games on the road, and they won the first 4. And the 5th game was against the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. And Marquette was leading at halftime, and they found out at halftime, the sports information director told Al, we're in the tournament. And so Al broke the news to the players, and as you know, John, he changed out of his
they let the
suit.
sweat dry.
He changed out of his suit, and he put on another suit because they had made the tournament. And the second half, they gave the game away.
Marquette had this stall, which they called the Creighton stall, with Bo Ellis in the middle, and it was a kind of a 2-on-2 where Bo would come out and help and throw opposite. Well, John Long of Detroit intercepted the ball, went down and hit a shot at that buzzer to beat him by 1. And Dick Vitale, every broadcast he ever made on ESPN, when the term Marquette came up, it must have been say, Dick, didn't you beat Marquette when they went on that semi? And he would say, oh, I did, and John loved whatever. So he would talk about that one game more than any game in the history. So Detroit won that game 64-63. So then the final game was at the Wichita State senior night. So everybody's thinking that's a game in the bag because it's Al's final hurrah, and the team just couldn't hit a shot. I think they shot under 20% for the game or in the second half, and it got so bad that it was 20 points. They're 20 points down to Wichita State. At the end of the game, Al had Gary Rosenberger dribbled out to half court and back so Al could get up and berate the officials. So he screamed at the officials, which he did, and half the people were booing, half the people were cheering, half the people were screaming, "Give him hell, Al." And one of the players told me that when Al went to the locker room, he started crying because he couldn't believe that it ended like this. And he said to Hank, "I can't believe this ended this way." They were they had just about 1% chance of getting it, and they turned the season around on a road game at Wisconsin, and they beat a good Wisconsin team on the road, and that created momentum up to the Michigan game. I believe Dick Enberg was doing that game because Al had after the Wichita State game, Al had the dark suit, which is in the Al McGuire Center under glass.
Right.
And so he wore that suit, and he kept wearing it as they won those 4 road games. And he wore it in the first half of the Michigan game. And then at halftime, he changed into this bright white leisure suit, and he comes out, and nobody told Dick Enberg this, so he comes out, and Dick Enberg goes, "Oh my, look at that. Marquette has just gotten the bid." And Al is just going around, and the team was playing, I think it might have been top five, maybe number 1 rated Michigan.
Yes.
They were ahead, Marquette was ahead at half. He changed the jacket, and they lost the game. And then he decides, well, I better put that jacket on. And that was kind of the genesis of that. But I believe they got the last at-large berth,
32nd bid.
the 32nd bid in that. But as Butch Lee said, Butch Lee was in town, and he was saying that Al retiring really took the wind out of the sails. He said, but we were ranked either 1 or 2 at the beginning of the year, so we knew we had the talent. But after that, we got the bid. We thought we could win this.
And it didn't help to get the bid that they had Al McGuire, right? I mean, anything they could do. Obviously, they went on that run at the end on the road, but
Sure.
it certainly helped. What are your other thoughts of that championship season? Because I'd love to eventually dovetail into Marquette, Shaka Smart, the tournament, and what it might mean for Marquette in the future. Could they get back there someday?
During the season, Marquette lost at Cincinnati by 1 point. I think it was a 63-62 game. And some of the Cincinnati players were really taunting Butch Lee toward the end of that game, really giving him a hard time. Butch never forgot that. When they opened the tournament play against Cincinnati, Marquette won that game, and toward the end of the game, Butch is pointing at those same players at Cincinnati who gave him a hard time earlier in the season and letting them know, we're going someplace and you guys are going home. Before the team left for Cincinnati, though, Bob Bach had an interview with Al at the old gym. And Bob felt that it was the best interview that he had ever conducted with Al. He said the questions were good, the answers were great, and he realized as he was leaving the old gym that he had not plugged his microphone into the tape recorder. So he goes back into the gym and he couldn't find Al anywhere. And he said, you know, there's only one way to get in and out of the old gym, and I couldn't find Al anywhere. It was like Al was Houdini, another Milwaukee area person. And Al said he always felt that he could do his Houdini act and deal with the media the way he wanted to, and he would always get good publicity for himself and for Marquette. But Bob Bach always regretted the fact that he didn't get that on tape because he felt it was the best interview he'd ever done with Al. And then before they opened the tournament, Bob felt that the night before the Cincinnati game that Al was very, very relaxed. He was just enjoying himself. He didn't think that Al looked like he was under any kind of pressure. And he felt that Al was probably going into it feeling comfortable about where the team was at and how good they were.
John, that legend, and again for younger folks, of course, this is Marquette, right? That championship season. This is what you build toward, and hoping Shaka can get them back there. All the excitement. We remember D. Wade in the Final Four, Tom Crean, but Al almost didn't get back into the building for the championship game. I mean, that's an incredible story.
Yeah, I'll let Joe tell it.
He had gone to Norm Van Brocklin's pecan farm in Social Circle, Georgia. And he just got on his motorcycle and drove out there.
How did he connect with a former NFL quarterback and coach, Norm Van Brocklin?
You know, I don't know what the connection was, but I do believe it might have had something to do with medalist.
Okay.
Norm
Yeah.
Van Brocklin might have been one of the medalist coaches at that time.
Al worked for Medalist, right?
And
all
so
that.
that's
yeah.
how Al knew him, and so he knew that this is where, as Al referred to him as the Dutchman,
Yeah.
had his pecan farm, and he went out there, and he said as he arrived with his motorcycle, Norm Van Brocklin thought that Al was the veterinarian helping to deliver some
No,
calves.
you're kidding.
Helping to deliver the calves that he was getting ready to have on the farm. And Al says to him, "Hey, Norm, who do you think this is?" Yeah. "It's me, Al." Yeah. So Norm shows him around the farm, and then he looks at his watch and he says, "I better get going downtown. I got to get to the game." So as he's driving back downtown to the game, he winds up getting in a friend's car toward Atlanta and driving him to the.
What did he do with the motorcycle?
I don't know. There is a rumor that the motorcycle broke down on the way back from Social Circle, Georgia, but that's probably one of those apocryphal Al McGuire stories. Yeah. So he's in a car in traffic in downtown Atlanta, and one of Al's boyhood friends is in another car. He looks over, he sees Al. What's he doing in a car? He should be at the arena. So as Al gets dropped off out at the parking area at the Omni, the governor of Wisconsin, Patrick Lucey, sees him. And Al just casually says, "Hi, Governor." "Al, why aren't you with your team?" He said, "They know what to do." He says, "I'm not sure I know what I have to do." So he goes in, and when he gets, he didn't have his identification with him. So he didn't have his pass, to get into the arena. So the security person would not allow him in. And so he says, "Well, tell Hank Raymonds, he's my assistant coach, get him here and he'll vouch for me." So Hank came and he vouched for Al, and Hank said afterward, he was always late for everything anyway.
Yeah, that's a beautiful story.
Typical Al.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a dynamic with that team that probably the best, one of the highest, in terms of reputation, talented players was Bernard Toon on that team. And he and Al never quite saw eye to eye. Bernard didn't maybe expend a lot of effort on the defensive end, which really grated on Al. And so he would teach him a lesson by not playing him. And Marquette had a very good Swiss Army knife type player named Ulyss Payne, 90% free throw shooter. He could play multiple positions, great passer, just a really nice player. Well, he broke his wrist probably about a month, right around after the Wichita State game. So he was out for the year. And I remember thinking, when I heard that on the TV, I remember thinking, now Al has to play Bernard Toon. And so he did play Bernard Toon. Bernard Toon got hot in that tournament and was just an excellent player, and because he had to be used. But at the Creighton game, that first game in the tournament, or in Creighton, Jim, they played Cincinnati in a rematch. And at halftime, Al McGuire and Bernard Toon had a fist fight in front of the entire team. And they said that took all the pressure off. It brought the team together somehow. And from that point, they went out in the second half and they kicked, I heard one of the players told me they kicked Pat Cummings' butt in that second half of that game. Talk about the fight, if you can, and try to put that one in perspective.
Once again, another apocryphal type Al story. As they were coming off the court at halftime, Bernard did not have a good first half against Cincinnati. And as Bob Bach described it, it was Bernard on another planet and not being there fully focused on what the job at hand was. So as they're walking off the court, Bernard is complaining to Al about his playing time and that Al had promised him this and Al had promised him that. And Al said, I never promised anybody anything. And when they got into the locker room, what happened was they got chest to chest and Al slapped Bernard across the face. And then they got into some pushing and shoving and they had to be restrained. I can't remember if Rick had restrained Bernard and who it was that restrained Al.
I think it was Bob Weingart, yeah.
And so it was...
Couple of big guys.
And so Al felt that really is what he described it, cleared the decks and got all the pus and the bad feelings out of the system. And Bernard went on to have a very, very good second half. And when they played against Wake Forest to get to the Final Four, Bernard had a fantastic game. So that helped get everybody back to where they were going to be playing for themselves and not necessarily just playing for Al, because Ulis told me that once Al had made his decision not to come back, that the players were thinking that they had to win this for Al. This was his time. We have to do this for Coach, and Coach always reminded them, according to Ulis, is that you have to play for yourselves, not for me. Mm-hmm. And once they decided to do that in the tournament, then everything opened up for Marquette for that national title.
Joe Moran, unbelievable. Great author and super insight as we go down memory lane. Brought to you by Moonlight Graham, Modern Dental Benefits. Moonlight Graham, proud sponsor of Marquette Hoops and this basketball show. John, a final comment from you about the Marquette program going forward.
Well, first, thanks to Joe Moran for going above and beyond, from driving up from Chicago to be in studio, which we appreciate. It's just been a great season. Who would have thunk with this young team in a rebuild that Shaka Smart could use the transfer portal to make the NCAA tournament and coach them up in a league like the Big East. So no game is easy in the Big East, and they were able to finish with a 9th seed in the tournament, hopefully a springboard for the future.
This is exciting, and of course we'll be back next week right here on My 24. We're very grateful for our producer Jason Ruck and John Dodds. I'm Tom Pippins. Thanks for joining us, everyone, on the Marquette Hoops Basketball Show, brought to you by Moonlight Graham, Modern Dental Benefits. Moonlight Graham, a proud sponsor of this program. See you next time, and God bless.